Hey everybody, it's Ron and Ellie back for another edition of Ask Ron. First up this week is Joe Liginza in Pennsylvania. Joe says, I keep hearing you stress buying properties using a trust. I'm from Pennsylvania, and as I understand it, I'm not able to use a trust. So, Ron, what are my options?
All right, well, that's incorrect. You are able to use a trust in Pennsylvania, and here's the deal. In the past, the reason that people didn't use them in Pennsylvania was simply because the state wanted to charge it like a corporation fee to use a trust. I don't know what it was, $200 or $300 a year. Therefore, that made it ridiculous, actually, to pay that fee every time I wanted to use the land trust. Same fee we'd pay if we had a LLC there. So people wouldn't do it. However, I'm told that that's no longer the case. So everybody that I talk to in Pennsylvania is currently using a land trust, because they apparently have waived that fee or reduced it to a tolerable level. I'm not sure which. Look, if it becomes a big deal, just use an LLC. Just that you got to put several properties in an LLC is the only downside. Just don't have more than 5 or 6 or 7 in there at one time, and I can live with it.
Okay. Next up is Sharon Childress in Texas.
Hey, Sharon.
Sharon says, I'm a newbie in the Gold Club, but I have an ugly house from a divorce in a small town. I just haven't had the funds to do anything with it. So, what would you say is the best strategy I should use on this property to get started?
Well, Sharon, I can't answer that without a property information sheet. And Elliot has told me that he sent you one, so if you'll get that back, I'll try to get you that answer based on you filling out the blanks on it. Because I don't know what's on the seller's mind. I don't know if they'll take terms. I don't know if they insist on all cash. I don't know if their asking price is below market value enough to where I'd entertain all cash. You're kind of leaving me in the dark here. So the answer is get the information on this house or any other house before you can decide what to do next. Now, if this were a bank-owned property, I'd know that the only way I'd buy it would be all cash. But since it's owned by individuals, people, all of those options are available. Until I talk to them and get the sheet filled out, I don't know where to go.
Okay, we'll update you next week on that, Ron.
All right.
Our next questions, or set of questions, come from Paul Brennan in Massachusetts.
Hey, Paul.
His first question says, are the title and the deed the same thing?
Yes.
Fantastic. Second question says...
Well, if I'm referring to real estate, okay, a title to a car and a deed to a house, not the same thing. But yeah, the title and deed is the same in real estate.
Okay, his second question says, do we want a copy of the deed or the real deed itself?
You won't get the real deed. A copy of the deed is all you need. The real deed is recorded at the courthouse and then sent back to the owners, but you don't need the original deed to do anything. As long as it's recorded. In the case of transferring ownership of a house, there's always a new deed created. Unlike a car title, where I got to come up with the original car title to transfer ownership. You don't do that in real estate, so a copy's good.
Okay, that's all from Paul. Next up is our favorite Californian, Marianne Nunez.
Marianne, I missed you.
She's got 2 questions. Her first question says, when the house is over leveraged and you know from the start that you'll not be staying in the deal, do you let the seller know from the beginning that you'll be subleasing it to a tenant buyer?
Now, Marianne, I'm glad you asked, because look, I have right here in front of me my new terms book that I'm going to be using all weekend to record my new terms course. Look at this thing, it's 205 pages thick, and there's a lot of work I put in this. But let me just read the script right out of it. I'm on page 62, right in the terms book, and your question was, when a house is over leveraged, does the seller know that I'm going to put a tenant buyer in there before I close on it? Well, here's the answer. Since you have no equity in the house, I couldn't buy it, but fortunately I do have a plan to get you out if you wish. Would you like to hear it? Shut up, wait for an answer. I'll lease your house with the option to buy it at the loan balance at the time it's purchased, and your payment will be made until it's cashed out. However, it must be a long-term lease so the value has time to increase and the equity to return. I'll locate a quality tenant buyer to move in until they have enough equity to get a new loan and thoroughly screen them for the ability to pay. Then they'll have a financial stake in the house and be responsible for all the repairs after 30 days, and you must approve them before they move in. I'll reserve the right to either stay in until they cash out or just assign the agreement to you and let you collect directly from the buyer. I'll probably leave that decision up to you after I find that buyer. It costs you nothing and there's no commission. I'll do all the work and you'll have the final word. If you say they're out, they're out. I'll collect whatever I can from the buyer, locate them at my expense, and my compensation does not come from you, so it costs you nothing. So if that sounds okay, I'll come to see your house and answer your questions, and we'll get some simple paperwork done while I'm there. Okay? That's the script. Couldn't be more clear of our intent, and the seller clearly knows that we are not doing anything unless we find that buyer that we like, and then we'll plug them in and collect our fee from the buyer. That's it. Okay? Let the scripts work.
One more question, kind of the reverse, Ron. So,
right.
Same question, but for the buyer. Do you tell them you're assigning their agreement back to a seller and you're out of it?
There's no need to tell the buyer anything of that nature because it doesn't affect them one way or another. The buyer is going to make the same amount of rent payment regardless of who's collecting that rent, and frankly, they could care less usually as well. So usually I put the buyer in, and then I decide if and when I want to assign it back to the seller, because I don't have to assign it back to the seller. And that's one thing I'm going to discuss this weekend. Let's be real careful before we go giving away deals and giving it back to the seller. You see, even if there's no monthly spread in it, and even if it's over leveraged or at retail price, that doesn't necessarily mean you ought to just give the deal away and get out of it, because in many areas right now we got some pretty serious appreciation going on. Plus, if that tenant buyer moves out of there, there's always a chance you can come back later and put another one in there and collect another big chunk of money and keep it. So the debt is going to go down, the value is probably going to go up, so there's really no reason for you not to stay in unless you just decide, I'd rather just get out of it and not even think about it, but that is your choice. So you may assign this contract back to the seller immediately, or you may decide to hang around for a while, or make that decision a year from now. And in that case, of course, you don't tell the buyer anything because you're not even sure what you want to do yet. Again, the buyer really doesn't care. You can go ahead and assign it, then tell the buyer you've done it, and send them a letter to tell them where to send their rent payment now.
Okay, Ron, that's all the questions we have for you this week.
All right. Guys, if you're watching this right now, you've probably got a very short time, like maybe a couple of hours, to get registered for my event this weekend. Remember, I'm doing the terms event. I'm spending 2 days recording a whole new course, and there's never been anything like it out there. And you've got a chance to get in there for only $497. You can sit at your computer and spend the weekend with me. Look, it's either me or honeydews. Might as well be me. Go spend the weekend with me, and I promise you it'll be well worth your time and a small amount of money you spent. And you can download the manual. Download it on your iBooks or whatever. You don't want to print this thing out. It's 205 pages because we're going to send you the original. You just won't get it by this weekend, of course. So still got time. Still got time. Go down and get registered right now, and I'll see you this weekend. And if not, I'll see you next week.